attention, Brian. I'm going to give you some IPE maintenance tips today for IPE decking, and that's a Brazilian hardwood, also known as Brazilian walnut or ironwood. Normal hardwoods, you want to sand, start at a lower grit, like an 80 to 100, and work your way all the way up till you're at a 220, and then you're going to water pop. With IPE, it's incredibly dense, and we're using it outdoors, so in order to take the oil, we actually just sand it between a 40 and a 60, so I just use a 60 grit, and that's it. Also, water popping IPE is redundant. It doesn't do anything. There's no point in doing it. I know a lot of people are going to argue with me on that, but it's the truth, and I heard it from the horse's mouth. IPE tree itself told me that. First thing you want to do is make sure the deck is completely clean and dry. Completely dry. So if it's a rainy day or the forecast calls for rain, you cannot do this. We're going to take our 60 grit and we're just going to run over the whole thing, a quick once over before we oil. Let the sander do the work. Don't press too hard. We'll sand the entire thing, and then I'm going to show you how we oil. Okay, so we have some areas while we're sanding the deck, in our case, where the boys might have forgot to take that damp rag, and or myself might have forgot to take the damp rag and wipe the plugs. So that's not a big deal. We can sand it, but in between, we got some dried wood glue here, and it's important to just, you could either buy sandpaper, or I'll just take an additional sanding pad, and I'll just go over them like this, and make sure all the little, anywhere where there's glue, even if the glue is invisible right now, it'll show up once you oil as like a slick spot where it just kind of looks funny. So you want to make sure you get in the cracks now and you do that extra work that the palm sander can't reach by hand. You won't regret it, just to make everything look that much better. This is our chance to get any superficial scratches out before we oil. All right, so we don't want to get the deck dirty now that we're done sanding. So I'm just going to kick my boots off for now. Hopefully no scorpions get in there. Look, a honeybee. Maya's on barefoot. What a guy. Okay. Now she's opening up. There we go. Woo!
Come on. You put your arm right in front of the camera.
Got it. Okay, so before I go too much further, clearly we're going to make a mess. I got these really cool black gloves. They're a lot like dishwashing gloves, but they're black. That way we look cool when we're wearing them. And we'll put these on. This will keep our skin protected. We got to give this a stir. Give this a good stir. It's already, it hasn't been sitting dormant for too long, but I'll just give it a stir to be on the safe side. Make sure that you can use a microfiber towel. It's just what we like to use. You can use a sponge. You can use a rag on a stick. You can use paintbrushes. You can use whatever you want. But I like to just use a towel because we wipe it with the towel after anyways. Now bear witness to the oil for the first time going on the virgin deck. Ready? And I like to use a rag so I can get in between the cracks as well. We want to avoid getting oil on anything that's not IPE in this case because it will leave little marks behind, and we don't want that. So we're going to work our way in. The more the merrier. We can wipe it off after. We get lots. It's going to seep right in. That's why we use the 60 grit sandpaper to open the pores up of all the deck boards so more oil can get in. Privacy screen before we go too far, because we don't want to have to backtrack over the freshly oiled deck to hit it. So this is where the real magic starts to happen. You always want to be super liberal with those flat surfaces. Make sure they get as much as they need to drink. Buzzwords. Lots and lots of oil on the top there. Don't skimp. You will regret it if you do. With the grain all the way down the line. The cool thing about having it on a cloth is you just give it a little squeeze if you need to add a little more, because there's lots inside the cloth here. Look at that. Not taking any prisoners today. Where are we? To get inside in between these cracks. Look at that, baby. That's what we're after. Getting right in there. You gotta make sure we get in between the cracks. Put your rag in there and ride that track, that crack track, all the way down. A little bit too much is okay, and we can wipe the surface again after. So we just want to get a nice wet rag in the middle, and we'll run it down. A sponge would work great too if you had one. I don't have one with me, but this works just fine. So we're all done. Oh yeah, looks good. The oil on these rags is highly combustible. So if you leave these rags in a pile like this and you put them in a dumpster, there is actually a probability that they would catch fire in the heat of the summer. And I've actually seen it happen. I've seen a few dumpster fires started by oily rags, IPE oily rags. So one cool way to do this is you take your rag, you take your glove, maybe a couple of them. This is how we bag them up at the same time as we get rid of our gloves. There's one. Two. All right, check it out. It's all done. Oiled up. Okay, to recap, you want to make sure that it's a sunny, dry day. It hasn't rained the day before, and it's not going to rain the day after. You want to make sure it's at least 10 degrees Celsius or 50 degrees Fahrenheit. You want to make sure you use a 40 to 60 grit, contrary to popular belief. Trust me, 40 to 60 grit is all you need to open up the pores and make sure they can take the oil. You don't need to water pop it. It's redundant. It doesn't work. Trust me, an IPE tree told me that myself. After that, you want to make sure there's no streaks. You oil as much as possible, and then you just step back and have a look.